Welcome to Lesson 48, Analyzing Measures of Central Tendency. This lesson should be review for all of you because you've learned this in several other books in your curriculum and in several other grade levels. So we're just going to review them really quick. First of all, a measure of central tendency, the definition, is a value that describes the center of a set of data. So go ahead and write that on your paper, the value that describes the center of a data set. Excuse my messy handwriting. And while you're writing that in, I'm going to write in the mean, which is another word for mean is average, which we all know. And to find average, you add all the numbers and then divide by how many you added up, by how many values you added. Okay, and then the median is the middle. They both have D's in them, if you use that trick. Median, middle. For mean, they both have A's. Mean, average. So to find the middle, you just kind of go from end to end until you get to the middle, crossing out numbers. They have to be in order they have to be in numerical order for you to do that, to find the middle. The mode is the most, and that trick, I guess you would say, is that they both have an O. So which value occurs the most times. And the range is how much space is covered. By the data set. So you subtract the least number from the greatest. Okay, and then the outlier is a value that is much, I'm going to underline much, greater or less than the other values in the set. If you need more time to write these down, you can always pause while you write them down on your paper, but I'm going to move on. So the first example, we have this set of numbers that shows the mean, or the average age, rounded to the nearest whole of the populations of 11 northeastern states in the United States in the year 2000. We have to find the mean, median, and mode of the values and round them to the nearest whole. So keywords here are we're finding mean, median, and mode, and rounding to the nearest whole. The first thing we have to do is put the data set in order because these numbers are not in order. So we need to look for the smallest one first, and the smallest value is 36. And when I'm putting them in order, I cross them out as I go, so I make sure I don't repeat or miss numbers. And I can see there's another 36 there. And looking through here, I see another 36 as well. So there aren't any more 36s. The next number would be 37. I'm going to cross them out as I go. And one more here. The next number would be 38. Cross that one out. And there's another one. And then the last number is 39. So now that I have them in order, I'll start with the mean just because it's the most challenging of the measures of central tendency. And I'm going to add all these numbers up. And I'm going to use a graphing calculator. And on a graphing calculator, I'll show you on the next screen here, you can see that it shows you all the numbers as you're adding them up. So before you press equals to get your final answer, you can check your list with the numbers on your paper. Make sure you have 3 36s and 5 37s and 2 38s and 1 39, and then press equal to get your sum. So the sum is 408. 408. And then we divide by how many numbers there are, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 numbers. So 408 divided by 11 is 37.09 and some other numbers. But if we have to round to the nearest whole, that's all we need. So that rounds to 37. Okay, the next one, next measure we're going to be looking for is median. And median is the median is the middle. So I'm going to use a different color here and cross out end to end. I'll use a highlighter so we can still see them. So I'll cross out one on this end and one on this end. And again, one on each side, one on each side. And I'm going to keep going until I get to the middle, which is 37. And then the third measure that I'm looking for is the mode. Mode is most, so I need to look at which number occurs in the list the most times. And I can see pretty easily here that 37 is listed the most times, so 37 is the mode as well. So that makes sense that 37 is the answer for all of them because 37 shows up quite a few times in this list. And that's all we need to do for that problem. The next problem, we have a table that shows us the total points teams scored in 2 divisions of an all-star football league for the 1981 regular season. So it lists all the points for the North and all the points for the South. And the question is, did the North or South have a greater range of points over 1981 regular season? So keyword being range. So we have to find the range for each one. Now remember, range is the difference between the least and the greatest. So I don't need to put these numbers in order. I can just look through them to find the least and the greatest for each one. So looking at the North, I see a lot of 300s. I see one 200 there. Going over to the right a little bit further, I see another 200, 253, and then 207. Looks like the smallest to me. I don't see anything smaller than that in my list. But look very carefully. Once you choose your least, make sure you go back and check every other number. Make sure it's not smaller than that. Okay, and then my greatest, I only see one number in this whole list that's in the 400s. So that's going to be my greatest for that one, 426. And then for the South, looking at all the numbers, I originally thought 273 was the smallest, but then I kept going and found 259. So then I double checked to make sure that was the smallest, and it is. And then the largest, I do have a couple 400s here, 421 and 478. So 478 is bigger. So for the North, I'm now going to subtract 426, so the greatest minus the least, minus 207, and that equals 219. And for the South, I'm going to take the greatest, 478, minus the least, 259, and that equals 219, actually. So the answer to this problem, which has the greatest range, it would be neither. They both have the same range of 219. Okay, and the next question here. Now we're going to be talking about outliers, which we talked about on the first page, is a value that is much greater or much less than all the rest of the values. So we're looking at this data set that shows us the high temperatures for the first week of April in 2007, Austin, Texas. And it says to identify any outliers. So looking at this list, if I were to make a number line and start with 50, I'm going to go up by tens. That one I should have, let's make that one a little farther down the line here. So they're a little bit better spaced here. Okay, and then I'm just going to put X as approximately where the values are. So I have one at 50, I'm going to go backwards. I have one at 69, 73, 74, 84, and 85. So I can see by looking at this list that this 50 is quite a bit further off from the rest of the values. So that would be my outlier. The second part of this question asks, how does it affect the measures of central tendency? So that means I have to find the mean, median, and mode with the 50 and without. So we'll start with the mean. So if I add up all these values, I want to specify that this is the mean with the 50, the outlier. So I add them all up and it equals 519, and I added 7 numbers including the 50, so divide by 7, and that equals about 74, rounding to the nearest whole. And then the mean without, the W/O means without, the total is 469, but this time I'm only going to divide by 6 because I took out the 50, I took out one number, and that equals 78. So you can see that it goes up 4. So it's 4 degrees, since we're talking about temperature, higher. Whoa. Okay, and then the mode is the most, and the only number repeated here is an 84. So that doesn't change at all, it stays the same. So I'm not even going to list it. So I'm going to next look at the median. So I'm going to have a median with and a median without. So the median with, remember we're looking at the middle. These aren't exactly in order, but they're almost in order, so I'm just going to use them. 80, 50, 85 is the highest, so I'll cross it out first. The rest are in order. So then I'll cross out the 69, 84, the 73, the 84, and I get 74. But if I take out that 50, and the last numbers that would be left would be the 84 and 74, so I'd have to average those. So 84 plus 74 divided by 2. And that equals 79. Sorry, I kind of got squished here. So 79 is 5 degrees higher. So you can see that that outlier changes, this says degrees by the way, even though it's really messy, changes the measures of central tendency quite a bit. Okay, and then the last question here, we have some test scores. Hope's test scores are 89, 75, 98, 88, 81, 94, and 92. So we're looking for mean, median, and mode. It doesn't say whether or not to round, so we'll just do the best we can. I'm going to put them in order, and I'm going to put it on pause while I do that. So why don't you put the numbers in order on your own paper while you're waiting. Okay, now that they're in order, I can add them up. If I add them up, it equals 617, and there are 7 test scores, so divide by 7, and that gives me 88.1 for the mean. And the median, I need to find the middle, so I'm going to cross off, and that gives me 89. And none of these scores are repeated, so that means for mode, it just equals none. There is no mode. They're each listed an equal amount of times. So those are our answers for that question. Thank you for taking notes, and thank you for listening.